Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to InvestStream Live. We're doing an interesting topic today. Why should investors be updated on a regular basis? And what's the strategic importance of doing this for founders? So we've got two great founders from Workomo and PaperStreet joining us today. Well, we're going to jump right into it now. All right. Gentlemen, welcome. How are you?
Hey.
How's the quarantine treating both of you guys?
It's so much fun hanging out inside.
Especially as the weather gets warm, right?
So it's not too bad, but I can imagine for people stuck in the city, it's probably pretty rough.
Yeah, I know a few friends who are stuck in Manhattan, and it's been pretty hard on them. Other than going for runs, actually one of them lives pretty close to Central Park, so that's been good for him. He's like, yeah, park's usually empty unless the weather's nice. Then it's like any other day in New York City.
Yeah,
that's good. That's a great way to get sick. Anyway, so this is an interesting topic. Apparently, it's getting a lot of notice on Twitter these days. So, Mithra, you started a tweet storm last week about this. Matt, you've been talking about this for some time. I've been talking about it on the Raise and InvestStream and some of the other places for a while also. But it's still something that a lot of founders really don't pay a lot of attention to. A lot of founders never really get into a rhythm of sending out updates on a regular basis. Some founders do, but then eventually drop off. And there's a lot of interesting reasons why folks might drop off. But before we get into that, I'd like both of you to introduce yourselves. So, Sumitra, maybe you could start. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Workomo, and then Matt, we'll have you introduce yourself real quick.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Pankaj. Thanks for having me here. Feels great. It's a topic very close to my heart, and that was the reason behind doing the tweet storm. So a little bit about myself. So I'm Sumitra. I'm the founder of Workomo. Before starting up, I was the founding team member of Alibaba Group's global expansion team, working directly with Jack Ma and Josai post-IPO on driving the group's expansion across the world, across multiple markets. Came in through an acquisition of a startup where I was a senior business leader. Before that, I was a venture capital investor with IDG Ventures, investing in tech companies in Asia. So really done the entire journey of from a VC to turning a startup operator, to turning a big company operator, and now founder. So let me talk a little bit about Workomo. So at Workomo, we are essentially building an intelligent relationship building product for new age professionals. The problem we are trying to solve is, all the people that we meet in our careers, all the people that we work with, customers, partners, colleagues, investors, basically all these connections. How do you really convert these connections into truly meaningful, deep relationships that we can leverage to achieve our career goals? There's really no product out there that really helps us to do that. All the current products in the market are basically focused on discovery. That's where Workomo comes in. So think of Workomo like your Jarvis. It's a highly intelligent, personalized assistant. What it does is Workomo integrates into all your workflow products that you use to interact with your network right now. Right now, the current version is integrated into the calendar. We pick out your network, we analyze it, we classify it. We actually build data models at the back end for all the relationships that you have in your network. And then really based on each person's profile, your relationship with that person and your goals, we surface intelligent relationship building actions. So if you think about it, relationship building has always been this, really fuzzy, unstructured concept. Really, people really don't know how it works. Everyone seems to have their own secret sauce. We are trying to change that. We are building technology to really productize it and really make sure that using data, we're able to surface the most relevant information and the most relevant intelligence to any professional. So every professional in the world can really get better at building deep relationships in their careers.
Cool. Well, thank you for that, Sumitra. And also, as a disclaimer, just want to put it out there that I am an investor in both of these companies, so that yes, I am promoting companies that I've invested in, so everyone knows that. All right, Matt. Let's tell the folks about PaperStreet and yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Matt DeCourcel. I'm CEO and co-founder at PaperStreet. Before PaperStreet, I've started 3 other companies. I've been an angel investor in about 15 different companies. I've honestly lost count. Investor in Bitcoin and crypto early on. And also used to be a software engineer at Salesforce. And prior to that, I was a material scientist. To tell you guys a little bit more about PaperStreet, we are really building a network around the idea of investor updates. So as a startup founder, there's so many different tools that you need to use in order to effectively raise capital. So we're essentially aggregating a lot of those tools on top of a network that allows you to connect, be discovered by investors, and then also for those investors to reach out and connect with you and your investor updates. That's kind of the basis behind PaperStreet, and I'm really looking forward to talking about this topic because it's what I do every day.
Cool. So, look, Matt, let's continue on with you for a second. Tell us, what really got you to the point of building this into PaperStreet? You've been an investor in a number of companies. You are a founder. From the beginning, getting updates from you was like clockwork. Even before I had invested, was still getting updates from you on what's going on. So what really prompted you to make this as a core part of the PaperStreet offering, and why was it so important?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we went through Techstars, and if you go through a Techstars program, you basically have to start writing these updates on a weekly basis. So the whole idea of an accelerator program is you're going through, you're doing 1 to 2 years worth of work in a matter of 3 months. So as you're going through this program, there's so much happening, and there's so many new people, mentors, investors, everybody that that is a part of this accelerator network. And you really need a way in order to keep them up to speed on what's going on so that they can help you. I ran 3 bootstrap companies prior, and I'd never actually written an update until we went through Techstars. So while we were going through the program, we started writing these updates. And at first we wrote quite horrible updates, to be honest. And then one of the companies in our program started writing really good updates. And our managing director, his name's Yossi, he shared this with the entire class, and he was like, "Hey, I just got some feedback that this investor was really impressed with this company's updates." And they really put together, they had really built out this template that covered all the things that we should really be talking about in terms of our business. We didn't really get a lot of great instruction on how to write great updates. So when we went into the Techstars program, we were actually doing something completely different. We were building a platform that allowed for Regulation 506B and Regulation D 506B and 506C offerings. Those are the primary offerings that investors invest in companies. And we built a whole compliance platform where we did KYC ML, investor accreditation checks, document signing, payment processing, so that an investor could discover a company and then actively invest in a company directly on a platform. And we could get a sale up and running in like 30 minutes versus a lot of other crowd funded platforms that do like Regulation CF, Regulation Crowdfunding, or Regulation A. Those can take like months to actually get a sale live. So as the market, we realized this market really wasn't big enough to support the size of the network that we wanted to build. We started really looking into investor updates, and we realized that there just weren't a lot of great tools out there. And this is really intimate content that people are creating about their companies and their businesses, and they should really be doing this from like the beginning of the company through the end. So it was like, hey, how can we build a network and a bunch of tools to really facilitate like this this idea of investor updates and really build a community and a network around that. So we now target accelerator programs. That's where we start. We try to get to companies as early as possible and try to go after quality companies. So they do a lot of the lifting for us. An average Techstars program has 500 applicants per program. They boil that down to about 10 companies that actually get accepted in the program. And all those 10 companies come on our platform. They start writing their updates. They start building in this cadence. So it just became like a distribution channel for us to effectively build a product around. And, personally, I was just blown away by how many people that were willing to respond and like actively help with my company. It was just, it was absolutely bizarre to us. And I was like, wow, like so many founders should be doing this. So
you're eating your own dog food, and you brought up a point that I want to come back to later on, which is so many other people, not just investors, were getting these updates that you were sending out like clockwork, and that opened up other interesting conversations for you guys. So I want to come back to that. But Sumitra, I want to ask you. You put out a tweet storm last week talking about the strategic opportunity that investor updates present for founders, and how so few founders take advantages. And right now we're talking about investors in general. We're talking about VCs, yep, angels, A, B, pre-seed, everything kind of lumped together. And I think that changes as we kind of move up and down the stack. But broadly speaking, what prompted you to put out this tweet storm?
So this has been a big pet peeve of mine, just given that, having been a VC, then being an angel, being a startup operator, and now a founder, I've seen pretty much the table from all directions. And sort of, I think what prompted this particular tweet storm was actually this current crisis that all of us are dealing with, where a couple of months back, I've had the habit ever since sort of starting the company to really send out monthly updates. But then I started really focusing down and saying that, look, what is it that I want to communicate to investors? What am I really looking to get out of these updates with my own investors? And sort of it was simple, just that, look, we need a lot of help right now. This is a big challenge for all of us in terms of the fundraising environment, in terms of getting to customers, in terms of talent, but it's also in some ways an opportunity as well, that how can we as an early stage startup really sort of leverage this opportunity? And me as a founder of a company, what I really need is as many heads and as many wisdom around the table as possible. So that's when I started doing that. And then also, having been sort of an angel, I started looking at my own portfolio and saying, look, I want to have a view on how sort of these other founders are coping up with it. How can I help some of these companies, and what's really happening in these companies? And sort of I saw that really big delta, where even 2 months in now, I think we are more than 2 months in now into this particular crisis, and now we can really see that it's going to be a major recession or depression, whatever you call it, going into 2021. It's probably a once in a lifetime event that we're dealing with. And then I think I have a lot to offer that I feel for my own portfolio companies. I was really not seeing any information flow really happening from a lot of these companies. So that's what sort of it prompted, because I'm like, look, this is a time where all of us need to be really ganging together, right? We all need to be sort of together, but we cannot help each other if there is no information flow happening across the board, across the table. So that's what really prompted this tweet storm.
So, it's very timely, because it seems like, the quarantine has given a lot of investors a lot of time to think, and a lot of investors have been talking about exactly this topic. And partially, I guess a lot of investors are worried or concerned about where some of their portfolio companies might be headed during this time. So, what are some of the things that you've seen, both as a founder and as investors? And this question is for both of you. What's something that both of you have seen that makes a good update, right? Like, and in some cases, you may not even be an investor yet in a company, and you're getting an update from a startup that you've spoken to but haven't made a decision to invest in. What prompts you to say, hey, this is a good update, I want to talk to these guys again? And then, does it help you get over the hurdle and write a check? Or, if you're a potential customer, like maybe even Alibaba, when you were at Alibaba, Sumitra, when I'm sure you've worked with some startups when you were at Alibaba, what prompted you to go back to them and say, yeah, we want to work with you guys? Was it an investor update that really said, hey, let's open up this conversation further? So and the reason I want to go into this is because, both of you have talked about how other conversations happen because of the investor updates. You started with the investor updates to try and get a check, but it grew from there, right? And I really want to try and bring that out to hopefully get more founders to see the advantage of writing investor updates on a regular basis. So, Matt, maybe we could start with you.
Yeah. I mean, with all the companies that I've invested in, I regularly expect updates from them, obviously. But, for me, it's a way to take like that initial conversation and effectively like turn those dots that they give me when I meet them into lines. So really, that's what investors are looking for. And if you're able to use a tool in order to effectively turn those, hey, this is where we're at right now, or this is where we were at, 3 months ago, this is where we're at today. Here's how we got there. Here's the story of doing that. I think that's really important for me as an investor to understand like the trajectory of like where a company is going. In terms of my experience as a founder in writing updates, I mean, totally. There's been plenty of investors that we've had on the sidelines and we consistently send them updates. And then before you know it, it's like, hey, let's schedule another call. It seems like you guys have made a lot of progress. Would love to, discuss like what your round is like or so forth. So I think for me, like, that's kind of where things are at. I'm still.
Okay, cool. Sumitra, maybe you could add a few words.
No, I think completely agree with Matt on sort of all these points. I think I sort of tend to look at this like an effective investor update in sort of two categories. So there is sort of the content and sort of the more strategic elements around it, what you're communicating. And then there is sort of the more tactical element around it. So I think just from a content perspective, what I have seen work really well is just being very candid. I think sort of really having a very candid, honest communication on, hey, this is what is going well, this is not what's going well. These are the challenges, these are the asks. Also having a lot of really open communication around like the financial situation of the company. So really being open on sort of the topics which are so-called sensitive, right? Like which you would not probably feel comfortable talking about, but that's where it really matters the most. Being sort of really open about it. And these are your own investors, right? So I mean, you're sort of really sharing information with people who are anyway stakeholders of the company. So I just don't see any reason, which is what I wrote in the tweet as well. I don't see any reason why this information should not be shared with anyone who has invested even a single dollar in the company. So to me, I think that's the number one thing on the content side. And I think just tactically, it's cadence. Having rigor around a regular cadence, I think that builds trust. And I think that sort of goes back to even sort of a larger relationship building technique, which you can use in your career in any way. And I think it applies to investors or anything, is that you need to have a cadence of doing things, because I think repeatability sort of really shows trust. It shows that the person can sort of really trust you with sort of a lot of these things, shows rigor. It shows that you are sort of taking the time and you're being attentive to the various aspects of the business. And then I think the second part on the tactical side is also just making it very concise, making it very punchy, crisp, to the point, easy to read. You got to understand that a lot of these investors, I mean, that's something I hear very frequently from founders that, look, I mean, I've been sending these updates. I don't hear back from from my investors. Nobody like acknowledges it. I'm just wasting my time. Trust me, if it is a well-drafted update, if it is crisp enough, it's highlighting the key points, everyone has read it, right? So people might not respond, but people take note of it. And I've seen this in my own case where investors have responded or sort of brought up something that I wrote in January now, right? They're talking about it right now, saying, look, I read about it that time, what's going on? So people are registering, right? But you got to respect everyone's time as well. So you got to make sure that it's easy to read and consume.
It's funny you mentioned that, because Matt and I had exactly this conversation. We were talking about something, and he said, it was in my update. I said, well, I don't think I saw it. And he's like, no, you saw it exactly at this time on this day. And I said, oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good point that, for a lot of investors, especially those that have a fairly large portfolio, it sometimes does become difficult to keep track of all of the updates that do come in, right? And if they take 10 minutes each to read and to think about where or how you should respond, a lot of investors just say, well, I'll get to it later, and later never comes, right? It's not that they're ignoring it or they don't want to respond, but I think most investors are like, all right, let me do this when I have some time. I'll put aside some time and I'll do it then. And you just don't come back to it, right? I think that's the biggest problem. I think from an investor's perspective, I think you're right. Having something that is punchy, straight to the point, gets the main things out of the way right up front, but then provides some detail should certain people want to go through it later on. I think that's helpful and useful. One question I have for both of you is, do you, and I'll tell you my opinion afterwards, but do you advocate having different types of updates for different types of investors and different types of people?
Yes, I do.
Okay, could you expand on that?
So we actually write 2 different updates during our when we update investors, which is on a monthly basis. I think somebody asked, what is a good frequency of updates? If it's early, at least monthly. And if things are happening really fast in your company, like weekly to bi-weekly. So if a lot of things are changing, that would be the cadence. But sorry, what was the original question?
So do you recommend having a different type of update for different investors and for different types of people?
Yeah, so for us, we section out our updates. We actually use our tool that we built for this to really help keep things organized. But so there's certain parts of our updates that we exclude for certain people. So, the people that we're the closest with, we are sending, our financials and, maybe our fundraising efforts and what things are going on with regards to that. For everybody else that is kind of like on the sidelines, like prospective investors, prospective customers, friends and family, where we don't want to share like the really intimate details of like what's going on inside of our business, we actually just copy that really sensitive update that we sent, and we just remove those sections that are sensitive, and then we send that to everybody else. So we actually send our updates to about 200 different people. And I would say like 30 or so people get the sensitive version of the update, and then the rest of the people get the less sensitive version. For people that are prospective investors, prospective customers, they're going to forward that update on. So, you might not want to share what your revenue is or like your financials or, anything that is super sensitive or that's like maybe really going wrong with your business. So, those are things that you would want to remove. So yes, we definitely advocate for it. And, that's one of the reasons why we built our platform to make like a lot of these things really easy.
Yeah. Cool. Sumitra, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, you've done this as a professional VC, as an angel, and as a founder. So, I'd love to hear, has your perspective changed as you've gone through these different roles also?
Yep. Yeah, it's been interesting. So, when I was in a VC firm, we used to write a lot of updates for our LPs. And again, LPs used to be, sort of your own current LPs. And as Matt mentioned, a lot of LPs on the sideline because, as I think, Pankaj, you would definitely know this, right? Fundraising is sort of such a long drawn out thing. So all the relationships are so important. You'll get the returns like 3-4 years down the line in so many cases. So and that was actually my first training where we used to have, and this is something that I've continued to do even now, which is I tend to have one section, which is like the sort of base section. The base section is basically an operating update on the company. And what I tend to do then is based on the audience, I tend to have a commentary on top of it. And the commentary actually changes a lot. And that's really customized. And that's literally like, it's very concise. It's literally 1 or 2 very crisp paragraphs. And what you mentioned, right, which is sort of really capturing the overall feel of where the company is right now. So that keeps changing. And then, yes, I completely agree with Matt. I think for anyone who's not a stakeholder in the company, for external audiences, I think you sort of need to remove the sensitive data. You need to sort of really clean up some of the confidential details about it as well. So that was sort of my experience that I've carried forward from my VC stand. At Alibaba, it was interesting because I was in a global expansion role and I was working with the Chinese culture, and we had Chinese, we had Indians, we had people from the US. Sometimes we had people from 5 or 6 nationalities in a project. And these were like billion-dollar deals that were happening, right? So the only way you could align people and you could get anything done was very, very effective updates. And these updates were going from the sort of junior most person in the team right up to like a founder of Alibaba level, right? So you really got to You wanted to make sure that these updates were like really, really driving home the point, what the asks were, where it was. And in fact, I would even and it was sort of an enlightening moment for me as well. I had not experienced it till then, was that basically decisions were happening based on these updates. Like there was no way for so many people to really align and come on a call and do a lot of this stuff. So a lot of the tactical execution that was happening on a weekly basis or even a monthly basis, which was driving execution forward for the overall project, was really happening with these updates. So we would like be doing these updates late into Friday night, Saturday morning, making sure that Sunday evening is where people would sort of be reading these updates. So the updates will be coming in. So there again, you have to really think through the format, who the audience is. I think it's very similar to how you are pitching your company as well. You're pitching yourself in a job or pitching to customers. You got to understand your audience and sort of really change the content.
So I want to. We had a question from on YouTube from Connor. Now, Matt, you answered this early on, but Sumitra, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what's a good frequency for the updates. You're also an early stage company. You've raised a round already, so you've got investors, you've got other folks that you want to raise money from. So I'd like to hear from you. What at this stage, where your company's at right now, what do you think is a good cadence? And perhaps through Series A, what do you think that? How does the cadence change?
I think it should be monthly right now. I think to Matt's point, if you're going through an accelerator program, and I think in the sort of really, really initial stages, if you're going through like that really make or break phase where you're pivoting, you're literally making decisions, like let's say you are recruiting co-founders, all these really big inflection point decisions are happening, then I think probably you can go for a quicker cadence as well. I think in my case, at least I do monthly. Most of the companies I've seen going till an institutional round tend to do monthly. Sort of founders who really focus on this kind of a thing. I've actually seen companies, and this is my portfolio, a couple of companies which have now gone to Series C. They're doing monthly. So they are sort of still sharing monthly updates, and a lot of them are in the consumer space. So there's a lot of action there in mobility, in sort of markets in Asia where there's rapid growth, rapid changes happening, competitive environments changing. So there's a lot to talk about. The format changes, but I think monthly is sort of a good cadence. I know founders who do it quarterly as well. Right now, frankly, the way it's happening, I'm happy to get even once in 6 months. I just want something right now.
Yeah. So he has a follow-up question also, and it kind of touches on your last point there about frequency as well as format and content, right? So in this case, I know some people have accepted this model of saying, all right, forget email updates. I'm going to keep people on a WhatsApp group or Slack, and I'll update them as things happen. I've been in a couple of those groups, and my personal experience has not been very positive. Sometimes you'll ask a founder on the WhatsApp group or the Slack group, hey, what's up? And you get no response. So it's no different than email or anything else. Right. And other times you'll get a very, let's say, a very cryptic message that puts something out there, but really doesn't get everything there that you need for this conversation, right? You need context around certain things. Like, oh, my founder just left, co-founder just left, right? And like, whoa, this came out of the blue. Let's have this conversation. So do you think like moving towards Slack or WhatsApp or any other type of team communication platform is the way it's going to be done in the future? Do you think people are going to look for more asynchronous and real-time updates on things? Do you think that that's going to be information overload? Because if you've got a portfolio of 80 companies, are you really going to be in 80 different WhatsApp and Slack groups? So, Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm personally not a fan. So, I mean, me being a founder, I think this comes with most good investors is, they're really trusting you to carry your business and kind of do it on your own and not have to kind of handhold you the entire time. when I have a good relationship with the investors, like, you, Pankaj, I, reach out occasionally, like via Signal or whatever, that's where we chat. But in terms of like writing updates though, there's just like nothing that like a Slack channel is not going to replace the exercise. So the thing that writing an update does is it really gives you this time to take away from the million other things you're doing when trying to run a company and grow this thing to like extraordinary highs, is take the time to really understand like, what have we accomplished? What are we being challenged with right now? What do our metrics look like right now? What did they look like last month? Like, what has changed? And then constructing that into a report card, which is essentially what your investor update is you're writing this report card and then you're distributing it to, your parents, so to speak. So I think it's really important, like trying to replace that with a Slack channel. Like people are already in a million different like communication channels. I mean, I don't know how many messaging apps there are. I really don't find that is probably going to be an effective replacement for writing updates. Like, again, writing updates is like writing a report card. How do you concisely say like what has changed, what's going good, what's going bad, where do our financials sit, where are KPIs right now, and trying to do that into a Slack channel, I think it really takes away that experience. And I don't think it's a good replacement. I don't think you'll get the level of engagement and appreciation for the work that your company's doing if you treat it like that. Plus, like, how do you build a timeline of progress of your company? Because often, like, when an investor wants to invest in our company, they're like, hey, let me get your last 3 updates. Like, they want to see those dots, again, like turning into lines. They want to see how we've progressed in the past 3 months. And you can't, like, how are you going to do that on a Slack channel or a WhatsApp group?
Right. Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
No, I agree. I mean, I've been, like I said, part of a couple of Slack and WhatsApp groups, and there's context that gets lost easily. There's a lot of times more questions that come up. I think the WhatsApp or Slack groups or other channels like Signal are great as a supplementary way of reaching out to folks and saying, hey, I sent you the update. I specifically want to talk to you now about this part of the update, right? I think that I've seen that work better, like you and I have done on numerous occasions. But yeah, I found that using Slack or WhatsApp as the sole form of investor updates hasn't been that successful so far, at least what I've seen. I don't know, Sumitra, have you seen anything different?
No. I think 100% agree with Matt and you. I think messaging is, just the intent behind these products are so different. I think messaging is great for sort of one-on-one interaction and driving home a particular ask with a particular person. But I think in a group setting, it just creates a lot of noise, a lot of clutter. That's what I've seen. It also brings down the rigor, by the way, of these updates. I think when you're writing an email update, I think what Matt mentioned, you're actually looking to create some sort of an evaluation framework for the company. And it's that rigor that matters. Frankly, it matters to the investors. Actually, it's a more helpful exercise for founders, because we then take sort of a step back and we look at where we are. Okay, like it happens to me so many times. I look at the cash in the bank, and when I actually calculate, okay, this was my burn, this is how much I'm spending on rent or whatever, I'm like, okay, I think now, this is what I need to do. Like, you get those moments because you are like a million different things on a daily basis. So it's a very, very important thing. So and also having be as an investor as well, I think WhatsApp just doesn't work. Like any of these messaging channels, they don't work. Yeah.
Cool. I just want to ask the folks that are watching, if you've got questions either on LinkedIn or YouTube, please feel free to ask us those questions. We will try to answer them soon. I've got one last question for both of you. And we could kind of dive into a free-form conversation about stuff that you guys want to talk about also. But my question is, you guys are pretty good about sending updates out on a regular basis with a lot of detail. And some of us respond, some of us don't respond at times. And Matt, probably less of a question for you, but Sumitra, for you, you mentioned that you use email as a primary source of kind of putting the investor update together and getting it out. Are there other tools that you think would be helpful to founders in terms of putting the content together, making it more digestible and shareable with the investors or other stakeholders also, right? Because sometimes, like you said, you want to eliminate certain sections from broader updates and leave them only in for investor updates. So are there some tools that you would like to see help you do this? Are there tools that you've used that haven't done it like you would like? And do you think tools could actually make it something that more founders will do on a regular basis? So we'll start with Sumitra and then Matt. I know you've definitely got some things to say about this. So
I think that's an interesting question. Look, I think there's a solid use case for tools when a task becomes overwhelming. I think right now, at least my experience has been that that people are not doing it at all, right? And it's sort of a basic education problem, right? I don't think people appreciate how important it is as a tool for building relationships with your stakeholders, investors, the entire ecosystem. A tool cannot be a replacement for motivation, right? So I think we need to solve the motivation problem first, or an education problem. I think people need to be educated. And I think that's where the entire ecosystem, investors, everyone needs to play a role to really sort of drive home the importance of founders. I think all leaders that all founders work with, I think that we need to do that. I think in the initial stages, I think it's fine as long as your scale is small. So if you're only sharing an update with a limited audience, with a limited sort of set of investors, most of them internal, not a very complicated audience, then I think any tool works. So you can start with like simple email, simple structure. But I can definitely see that as the company scales up, as you have other kind of external stakeholders also getting added, you have, maybe PR agencies, you have bankers, you have, like employees. For example, something that I like to do is to maintain literally a pipeline of sort of really good talent that I want to work with someday. And these are engineers, product managers. I like to update them as well in the company. So when you start really getting all these different kind of stakeholders together, and then I think it's hard to scale like a very manual process. It's hard to like write a commentary every time. It's hard to sort of do a lot of that, a lot of the sensitizing of content and all that becomes, I think, more challenging. So I think that's where sort of a tool would definitely help.
Cool. Matt.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot to say about this topic. So
yeah,
I totally agree with Sumitra. First is really getting the cadence and educating people around this. We do a couple of things on our platform because we're a network. And this is one of the reasons why we go after accelerator programs. Really, you have this tight-knit community of founders that has formed, and now they're all sending updates together. It's a great time for them to all put each other on each other's updates. So that's one thing that we really encourage when we start working with the accelerator program is, hey, all of the founders are part of this program, subscribe to each other's updates. And you can do that through our platform very easily. This gets everybody on this sort of it creates this almost like social competitiveness, if you want to think about it, who's writing better updates. They're learning from each other on how to write better updates. On top of that, the ones that start really, almost to the day writing consistent updates, you start to see the rest of the class also distribute updates shortly after. So it really starts to create this momentum for everybody. And then, once you're through a program, you've been there through 12 weeks, you've written, 12 updates. It's almost like a year's worth of updates if you've been writing monthly. You really start to build in that rhythm. I think that's one great thing about accelerator programs, especially like Techstars that does that. And then in terms of tools, Sumitra, you're right. When you get really good at writing updates, you start to realize hey, who's opened my email? Who's clicked on my links? Who's engaging with me the most? How should I structure this better? How can I make this consistent? That to me is one of the things that impresses me the most about updates is when they have like consistent structure, like week over week over or month over month, where, you know, the charts are the same, like KPIs are the same. They've told me, like, if they remove a KPI, they tell me why. They tell me every time what a KPI is. They remind me what their investor one-liner is. It just has consistent structure. You know, they do 3 like highs, 3 lows. They always ask for help. I think that's super, super important in terms of, you know, just writing quality updates, but really having a tool that's built around that. And that's what we've, you know, effectively built our platform around. We realized like this experience, like people are just going to Gmail or even trying to use MailChimp to do this stuff. And it's not really an effective tool for doing that. So how can we utilize a network, one, to really create this engagement, start building a community of founders, and on top of that, investors, and then, you know, effectively provide them the right tools on top of that network to distribute their updates. So I don't know. I think our platform is a great tool for that.
But you know, let's step back for a second. You know, a lot of your conversation was about accelerators and focusing on accelerators and the education happening at the accelerator stage, right? But not all startups go through accelerators. A lot of great startups never go through an accelerator program. And different accelerators run differently, right? Like sometimes a verbal update on a weekly basis is sufficient rather than a written update. Like at 500, you know, most of the companies that I selected for the accelerator, at least early on, I would meet with them once a week and we'd have a discussion and that was it, right? It wasn't really a structured, well thought through email that was being sent to me. So, you know, how do we solve the education problem, right? How do we get more founders to really understand that this is an opportunity for them rather than a pain point, right? So, you know, Sumitra, you know, not having gone through an accelerator program yet, never having worked in an accelerator before, how do you think we solve this problem, and how do you think we get more founders to really see that this is an important tool in their toolbox of, you know, building their businesses, building relationships, and hopefully building successful businesses?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think that's the core issue. I think we see a lot of founders across ecosystems. I mean, look at Silicon Valley, you look at East Coast, look at India, China. A lot of founders tend to talk about fundraising, talk about how to sort of choose a co-founder and how to get your first customer and how to hit $1 million revenue. But nobody really talks about the sort of long-term relationship building that really is key to building companies. And it's not just with investors, it's with like your other co-founders, it's with talent that you want to bring on board. It's with customers, even your first customer. It's really respecting the people who are agreeing or who are first interested in your journey and then sort of agree to be a part of your journey. How do you go deep with them? I think that's sort of the most important thing. And that's because it is fuzzy. It's probably does not, I mean, it doesn't have the buzzwords. Nobody really talks about it. So I think the more role model founders, people who have built scale companies, who have sort of had outcomes, and even investors to some extent, the more they talk about it, the more they write blogs about it, they sort of course, driving home that point one-on-one with the people they meet as well. But I think just having more conversation about this topic is I think going to be massive. I mean, I was surprised that nobody was talking about it. In fact, what I was thinking before even putting out this tweet storm was that like, is this stupid? Like, is it too basic? Should I even be writing about this? And then I saw the retweets coming in, and then I saw the VCs like posting and doing polls on it. I'm like, okay, I think this is like a basic thing, but there's no conversation around this, right? I'm sure Matt would agree. I'm sure he's like looking at these digital threads like all day long, and it's such an important part of it. I mean, you could like, who knows what's going to happen to your first company? Who knows what's going to happen in 2021 with this crisis, right? You need all the help. You need the entire ecosystem. You need all the stakeholders really sort of bought into sort of supporting you. And this is sort of a key relationship building tool for it. So I think it's just having a conversation at the ecosystem level.
Yeah. You know, I think, you know, there are investors, there are VCs and angels that are writing about it, talking about it. But I think, you know, they don't necessarily get amplified. and it doesn't reach many people. And I think, at least what I've seen is, there's a certain cohort, right? Like if you look at folks that have started up in the last 3 months, if they suddenly see a tweet or a blog post, they'll read it and they'll, talk about it and whatever, because it's been amplified in real time for them. But now if you go a year out from now, folks that are starting companies a year from now, they're not necessarily going to be going out and saying, oh, let me search for investor update and what investors think about investor updates, right? So it's not being amplified for them at that moment in time. So I think things just kind of, they're done, they're amplified in a certain time space, and then they're lost. And then you kind of have to go through the process again and redo it again, so that it's constantly being, it's constantly fresh content that's being amplified for founders, which I think is a challenge, right? It's difficult to do. Part of it could be done potentially by angel networks that are investing in companies, and just say, look, as part of this investment, we're going to require investor updates at a certain pace. Certain, like you said, celebrity founders that are angel investing could also kind of talk about this a little bit more and put it out there. But I almost feel like it's a perpetual education that needs to happen from all directions, and there's no one direction that's going to make it work.
So I actually, this is why we're building PaperStreet the way we are. But to me, the solution really is getting more people on updates. So the more founders that are exposed to other founders sending updates, the more they realize, like, hey, they're doing this, I should be doing this too. Wow, their update was really good. I'm sure all their investors or prospective investors are super impressed with how this company is doing. Wow, they're super transparent. Like, we've had founders on our platform that haven't been through accelerators as well. We have a wait list, anybody can sign up. But I've put some of these founders on our updates, and they've written me and they're like, wow, the best tutorial that I could have ever taken on writing updates is your update. Like,
so that's an interesting point. Like, I haven't heard that one before, of like founders updating other founders. So,
I would probably say like 80% of the connections that we see on our platform are between fellow founders. Like, we're building our network around founders, so they're like the core user that we're worried about. We're not so much worried about the investor side right now. Like, this is the whole part of a marketplace, like, that you struggle with, like, if you try to build two businesses at once, you'll fail. So if anybody's building marketplaces, like, try to figure out a way to focus on one side of the market. So we're really focused on founders. Founders are kind of our core users, and they are discovering each other. They're like learning about each other's companies. They're reaching out to each other. Hey, you guys are doing something really interesting. Well, I would love to meet, like, love to be on your updates. And we see that internally, and especially because we're focused on so many Techstars cohorts, like Techstars founders are more likely to connect with each other and like be open about sharing their information, because you're kind of a part of this like big Techstars family. But we hope to see that kind of crossover into the general ecosystem of companies outside Techstars as well. Now we're working with other programs. So but I think
a question specifically about that. Is there a place that any founder can go and say, hey, I want to get PaperStreet's updates? Can they sign up for it today?
Yeah, you can go to paperstreet.vc/PaperStreet right now, and you can subscribe to our updates.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. Very, very interesting.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like LinkedIn meets Substack is the basis of our platform. So we allow the ability for people to connect. We're actually adding chat like in the next 2 weeks. So you're actually gonna be able to chat with people that you connect with and companies you connect with on PaperStreet. But yeah, anybody can go to anybody's PaperStreet profile and then subscribe to their updates. And then it's really up to the founder whether or not they want to approve the request. And then we have a whole contact management system where you can put them in whatever group you want. So you can put them in like your less sensitive group. You just want them to get general updates. So.
Okay, cool. We got another question that came in. For a bootstrap company like ours, there we go. How can we develop the discipline of updates internally? something that we've been talking about, like, founders just, sometimes they start and then they stop. Sumitra, any thoughts on this while you're kind of, Matt's got this down pat because, they they built the whole product. I mean, it's just, he's eating his own dog food. What do the rest of us do to kind of build that discipline? What do you think?
No, I think this is incredibly important. In fact, I would argue that your investor update or whatever updates you're sending to all your stakeholders actually needs to come out of your internal updates. I mean, this is the first thing that you need to be chatting with your team. That's the most important thing. I've seen a few things work really well. A lot of these are sort of Valley best practices as well, which is, have a weekly sort of town hall every Friday. Sort of give a very quick presentation of where we are, what we achieved in this week. Depends on sort of what stage your company is in. You can sort of change the complexity or the cadence of that. But I think having a regular sort of town hall really works. In fact, our team is the Workomo team is completely distributed. So we actually do Zoom town halls and sort of they tend to work really well. So I think that's one. Second is that I think having, and again, I think this is something that the founder and the CEO needs to drive. Which is having sort of monthly KPIs, getting the entire team involved around them. So it could be KPIs, OKRs, whatever system you want to follow, as simple or as complicated, depending on your stage of your company. But really sort of having it being driven as sort of a bottoms up process. So having sort of everyone involved, each person who's leading each function, sort of really sort of bubbling up those things. And then you as a founder sort of presenting it in front of everyone and then sort of really tracking sort of progress on that. That's very important. That's something I've sort of really seen work really well with the team and drives communication, drives clarity of thinking. And then third is, I think, most important is metrics, right? Like what are the key metrics that your company is anchored on? Like what are you trying to achieve, right? Like ultimately of the net summation of all these things that are happening that everyone in the team is doing, I distilled down into sort of some top metrics, and even within that, like one North Star metric, like what is that? And what's the progress on that? That needs to be very transparent, very, very clear, clean. Sometimes even if you give very open access to it, a lot of people just have a lot of work. Like if there's a person who's writing code for 14 hours a day, you cannot expect the engineer to sort of come in and also look at the metrics of the product. So that's the role of the founding team. And the CEO or sort of one person from the founders who has to really drive home that, look, this is where we are on the product side as well. This is where we are on the hiring side. So I think the more transparent communication there is around this and sort of setting whatever cadence works for you. I mean, I always hesitate to sort of really put structures around it because that defeats the whole point of being in a startup, right? I mean, you do whatever works for you, but have a cadence, have a discipline, have a rigor. It gives predictability and comfort to the team as well. And then even for you, it's sort of a great discipline to really know where you are as a company.
Yeah, and to add to that, I've bootstrapped all my companies basically, but I understand, like, I feel like I don't have anybody to send my updates to. I guarantee it's not true. Like you should be updating almost everybody that you have a close relationship with, like your friends, your family, your former coworkers. I don't know if you are trying to raise money, your prospective investors, your prospective customers, your current customers, really sharing and building that level of trust and relationship with them. Like that's one where I would start sending updates. If you don't have investors, I'm really not a fan of even calling them investor updates. I know for a fact I have so much data on how many people these updates are sent to, and it's a lot more than just their investors. Like, trust me, I have some companies that send to 500 to 1,000 people, like their investor updates. So you should really be distributing this, and the reason for that is the more that the more that people understand what's going on inside your business, the more that they can help you, or the more that they understand like how it affects them, like in terms of your company, like if you're sending to a customer. So if you don't feel like you have anybody to send to, like you should start sending updates to people. And if you just want to do it internally, the thing that we do that like has really helped us, because we've really struggled too, because like we feel like the standard and the bar for our updates probably should be like a little higher than most companies, because we're kind of like the teachers. So, I mean, it's taken us like days sometimes to get an update out, like not where I'm spending every waking hour on it. But so what we do now is we actually schedule a weekly meeting as founders of the company. And there's 3 of us. And we start writing our update each week. And like we work on that draft week over week. And like the goal is by the end of the month or whenever our next update is supposed to go out, we're like in the middle of the month cadence right now. But after 4 weeks, like we expect to like send this update, and we've just been working on it collaboratively each week. We're checking our KPIs, we're updating our metrics. Like we're trying to make the process of like writing the update internally in our company as easy as possible. So that's one thing I would recommend, to take like 30 minutes and just like, hammer out some time to actually write the update together as a team. And then decide whether or not you want to distribute it now or wait and distribute it, next week or something, or in the next month.
Great points. We're over time. We thought we were going to do this for half an hour, but we're almost at an hour. One last question that I have for both of you is, how does this change as you guys close your Series A and your Series B? What about the angel investors or the early stage micro fund that came in really, really early on, or the accelerator program? There's some folks might have a legal right to continued updates and continued information, but most don't. So real quickly, in 2 minutes each, can you guys share your thoughts on how you think it should be handled going forward? And in some cases, your downstream investors that come in and write the larger check, they're going to ask you not to share too much information with older investors, right? And there are different reasons for why that happens. So, putting that in context, love to hear what you guys think. Sumitra, maybe you could start.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a great question. I think, at least in my experience, most founders, like even the best founders who really focus on it, tend to do it for the first 12 months, 12 to 16 months, 18 months max. And then I think once the next round gets raised, or the company sort of really reaches the next level, it really stops after that. And in a way, I mean, it's a natural process. The company, as the new investors come in, as in most cases they're institutional investors, there's a natural handover of the company that happens at the cap table level. So I think, of course, then there are different considerations. Sort of maybe you can't share the same information. What I would say is that I think that can sort of change the cadence of the of sending out these kind of updates. So maybe from monthly you go to quarterly, or whatever you feel is the right cadence. In fact, what happens typically when Series A or B investors come in is that you end up making a lot of materials around board decks, board updates, monthly updates, metrics dashboards. So there's already a lot of material that gets created as part of the standard processes that any of these institutional investors will put into the company. So it's actually fairly easy from there to really cull out the right information, maybe just put together a quick deck or email, whatever works for you, whatever is quickest, and then sort of really send it out. My, I think, sort of recommendation there is that have some cadence. I think the cadence sort of matters less, whatever works for you, whatever you feel is best for your stage of the company, but have it, right? I think having that thread of communication still ongoing with early investors. And look, a lot of these early investors, a lot of these early angels tend to be very sort of really value-added individuals on their own. And a lot of the challenges tend to remain the same for the first even 4 or 5 years of the company, like hiring. Right, if any of my angels, even 3 years down the road, can give me a referral to a great engineer, that's worth its weight in gold for me, right? So if that means me sending out an update every quarter, I think it's worth it.
Cool, thank you, Matt. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, somebody that invested in my company super early, took a chance on me. Took a chance on the business. I kind of treat them almost like a co-founder in a way. So personally, from my perspective, if we make it to C, D, E, F, whatever, H, I, G, then, I would plan to actually keep those investors, continuing to receive our updates. They took a really, they took a chance on us. And I feel like, although they might not have information rights, they should be getting some level of update. So again, like they might not get our full full prospectus or whatever you want to call it in terms of a really thought out full investor update that maybe the VCs would want us to not share with every investor, but at least a slimmed down version of that I think is more than appropriate. Again, these people took a chance on you, and it's as long as the investor also is they're continuously trying to help out, trying to fill gaps, trying to connect people, I don't think there's a shame in sharing that level of information. And honestly, we plan to send to people that aren't our investors as our company grows. Again, we feel it's really important to get the information out around what our company does, how we're progressing, how things are going. That just gets more. There's so much going on out there. There's so many ads. There's there's so much information being flown around. The more that you come to mind for them, the more likely they're going to recommend you to another founder, like for us or whatever the business is. So, as we build relationships with these people, we plan to continuously update them in some regard. But yeah, we might change the level of sensitivity in terms of updates. But that's my opinion. That's what I think all founders should do. But do what you want.
Cool. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your experience today. I know I learned a lot. I hope folks tuning in live were able to get some information. And last question that I wanted to ask you guys really quickly is if other founders, if other folks would like to reach out to you, are you okay with folks reaching out, and what's the best way for them to reach out to you? If you guys can share that info.
Yeah. For me personally, Twitter, my DMs are open. I don't think you can see my handle right here, but it's _ TY13R.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. If you want to get on our platform and you want to get your way, get past the wait list, please just send me a DM, and happy to put you at the front of the line. So cool.
Okay. And Sumitra?
Yeah, so I think same. I'm pretty active on Twitter, so anyone wants to reach out to discuss anything, more than happy to connect. If you want to give Workomo a spin, join our waitlist. It's live on the website, workomo.com. And looking forward, always interested in having conversations.
Fantastic. Folks, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for the time. Hopefully this conversation will continue on Twitter, but hopefully it gets resolved and there's no more conversation because everyone's just doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone, please check out Workomo and PaperStreet. I think you will definitely benefit from using both of these products. I know I have. Thank you guys, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Pankaj. Take care. Thanks,
Take care.
Pat.